Okay, good vach, good yar. Gemar Chasima Tova. So we have the opportunity tonight, B'siyat Deshmai, B'shus the Rav Mar Asra, to talk a little bit about tshuva and about the upcoming Yom Tif of Yom Kippur, which is going to hopefully offer us an opportunity for mechila, for kapara, through the tshuva that we're doing over the past weeks and month, and through the tshuva that we're going to do over the course of the day on Yom Kippur as well. Now, the start of the conversation I want to try to have tonight, B'nei Mirz Hashem, actually begins with wondering about that whole concept of tshuva in the first place. You see, we talk about the concept, the idea of tshuva, and we discuss it as if it's logical, as if it makes a lot of sense to us, as if it's something that really is reasonable, that I made a mistake. When I have a person that I offended, I did something wrong to, I made a mistake, I go over to him and I apologize, I ask forgiveness and he forgives me. If he chooses to, then he'll kindly forgive me, and we can get past it, we can move past it. And the same thing is true about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I do averos, I make mistakes, and I come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at least once a year, hopefully more times, and I say, I'm sorry, I apologize for the mistake, and I try to do tshuva, I repent for having done the avera. So tshuva makes a lot of sense. It's very obvious to us that it should work. But the truth is, nothing could be farther from the truth. Tshuva makes no sense. Tshuva is really an impossibility. The Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Lutzato, in his Mesilas Yesharim, in the fourth parak, makes the point that really we have a wrong conception, we have the wrong understanding of what avera is in the first place. If you think an avera is a mistake and you can wash it away, you can wipe it away with tshuva, so that's very sensible that tshuva should work. But that's not what chet is. Chet is not a one-off mistake that just comes and goes, easy come, easy go. Chet is a metzius, it's a reality, it's something which is real, it has teeth. It's something that has an impact on a person's life. The Ramchal doesn't quote this, but Rabbi Jonah in Shari Tshuva compares sin, to a kos tar'ela, a cup of poison. Meaning when a person ingests a cup of poison, it's not just, oops, a mistake, I hope I don't do it again. There's an impact, there's an effect, depending on how serious that poisonous toxic substance is. So it'll have a serious impact on his health. Rahman al-Islan, it can even result in death in certain instances. So swallowing some sort of poison is not a small matter. And when it comes to chet, when it comes to averos are not just things we do, they are realities. They actually have an impact, have an effect on us. We know, halachically speaking, Rav Chaim Volozhiner makes this point in his commentary on Pirkei Avos Ruach Chaim, halachically speaking, we know that a chet b'shogeg, an avera that you do by accident, also matters. It also has meaning. Most of the karbanos that we bring are for chataim, are for sins that we did accidentally. I forgot it was Shabbos, or I forgot this was Asar on Shabbos, and I did a malacha, so that's something I did by accident, something I did b'shogeg, and therefore I have to bring a karban to atone, to get kapara for the avera that I did. It was an accident, it wasn't on purpose, but guess what? If you swallow poison by accident, you have to go to the hospital also. It doesn't really make a difference that it wasn't on purpose. If you did something that's a reality, if sin is something that's real, that exists in our world, then it's something which takes effect, even if you did it by accident. They say a story, Rav Chaim Kanievsky quotes this in his Sefer, his Moshe Sefer Orchos Yosher. So he says that the Vilna Gaon, when he was a young boy, he was very, very careful about all of halachos, but he made a mistake one time, and absent-mindedly, without paying attention, he moved something that was muktzah on Shabbos. He moved a muktzah item on Shabbos. And he was so scared, he was so jarred by the experience of accidentally moving muktzah on Shabbos that he fainted on the spot. Apparently he fainted. Because he saw avera, he saw sin, he saw chet as something that was real, as something that happened, as something that impacted him. It was poison. It was by accident. He was a kid. It was really no big deal, but to him it was a big deal because he had yiras chet. He saw chet, he saw sin as an objective reality that has a real metzius, that has a real effect on a person. It's a kos tar'ela, it's a cup of poison, and it has an impact even if a person does it mistakenly. But once you have that understanding, says the Ramchal, says the Mesilas Yesharim, it's not so simple anymore to believe that tshuva should work. I did the avera. There's no changing the past. The truth is, I did the avera. If an avera is just an action, it happened in the past and I can move on, great. But it's an action that has historical relevance. It was a poisonous pill that I ingested. You can't undo that by asking forgiveness. You can't say I'm sorry and change history. You can't go back in time and change what happened. So how is it possible that tshuva works? How is it possible we do an avera, we bring that impurity into the world, we actually make that effect happen in this world in a real, tangible way, and then like this, on Yom Kippur, we say I'm sorry, we clap al chet, we go under our talis, we fast for a little bit, and it's all better? It's all healed? How is it possible that tshuva should even work? That's a question that I want to B'nei Mirz Hashem, a big question, I want to try to tackle in the next few moments together before we start the selichos. But in order to get there, we have to pivot for a moment and talk about something else entirely. We're going to talk about a din on Yom Kippur, a mitzvah, a halacha on Yom Kippur that's relevant to tshuva, but it seems like a tangent, but hopefully, it's going to get us back to the place where we started as well. We know one of the main features, one of the main things that we do on Yom Kippur is we refrain, we hold back, we abstain from eating and drinking, plus a few other inuyim, plus a few other physical pleasures that we abstain from, that we hold back from during the course of Yom Kippur. So we hold back from all these physical pleasures. We call it the chamisha inuyim, the 5 ways of afflicting ourselves, of torturing ourselves, and avoiding physical pleasure. The Rambam in the halachos, when he quotes this concept of inui, of achila and shsiya, of fasting, and all the other inuyim, he has a very strange phraseology. I printed it here, I'm going to read it to you, so pay attention. You're going to want to listen to the phrasing the way the Rambam writes it here. He says, mitzvah's essay, this is in the Shvisas Asor, Aleph Dalid, and also a little bit of halacha hey. Mitzvah's essay, Acheres Yesh B'Yom Kippurim. There is a positive commandment on Yom Kippur. There's a mitzvah that we have to do. V'hi, lishbos me'achila u'shesiya. Lishbos, lamed shin beis vav saf, me'achila u'shesiya. We have to lishbos. What does the word lishbos mean? We have it in another context. To rest. Lishbos on Shabbos, right? We have tishbesu, shvisa shabboson. There's a concept of resting on Shabbos. So, lishbos bo me'achila u'shesiya. You should rest from eating and drinking. You shouldn't eat and drink on Yom Kippur. Good. You have to fast on Yom Kippur. Shnemar te'anu es nafshosechem. The pasuk says you have to afflict yourselves on Yom Kippur. And mipi hashmo lamdu inoi hu lenefesh zeh hatzom. It means eating and it means drinking. You have to avoid that. And then the Rambam continues and said it's also true about rechitza and sicha and wearing shoes and all of the things that we know about. U'mitzvah lishbos mikol elu k'derach sheshoves. And a person has to abstain from lishbos, all of these inuyim, all of these pleasurable activities he has to hold back from, refrain from on Yom Kippur, just like he has to hold back from eating and drinking on Yom Kippur. This phrase of lishbos seems a little bit odd, I would say even misplaced. A person would not assume that the concept of shvisa, of Shabbos, of resting, applies to Yom Kippur. It's also a Shabbos. We also rest from malacha, that's true. But shvisa, resting, is a term that we use to imply stopping malacha, to imply stopping to do productive labor. Not being involved in toil and work on Shabbos is called shvisa, shabboson, resting from your work. But you don't rest from eating and drinking. Eating and drinking are allowed on Shabbos. It's not a shvisa, it's not a shabboson to fast. It's something else entirely. You have to hold back from, you have to stop. You're not allowed to eat or drink on Yom Kippur. But it's not shvisa, it's not lishbos. So why does the Rambam refer to it that way? You hear the question? That's the question we want to ask in the Rambam. The truth is, the problem that we have is not with the Rambam. The Rambam did not make this up. He did not even apply this on his own. This is not his doing. This is the Torah's doing. The Torah and the Psukim already has this phraseology. The Pasuk all over, but we'll talk about the one in Parshas Emor, says, Shabbos Shabboson hu lachem, about Yom Kippur. Shabbos Shabboson hu lachem. It's a Shabbos of Shabboses. It's the spitz. It's the highest level of Shabbos, the peak of a Shabbos. V'inisem es nafshosechem. You shall afflict your nefesh. May erev ad erev tishbesu shabbatachem. From evening until evening, the 9th until the 10th, all the way through, for that 25-hour period, including the day before where we eat, whatever that means. So tishbesu shabbatachem, you should rest your rest. You should have your Shabbos. So yes, Yom Kippur is called a Shabbos. That doesn't surprise us. It's also Shabbos. But what's interesting over here is that the pasuk is only referring to the isurim of inuyim. These things that we refrain from, eating, drinking, and all the other things that we refrain from on Yom Kippur, are what the pasuk is talking about here. The inisem es nafshosechem is only about inui. It's only about the self-affliction that we're supposed to be doing on Yom Kippur. And yet the pasuk introduces and closes with Shabbos. It says, Shabbos, Shabboson hu lachem, v'inisem es nafshosechem erev ad erev, tishbesu shabbatachem. So twice in this pasuk, or 4 times if you really combine the phrases, so the pasuk stresses again and again, Shabbos, Shabboson, tishbesu shabbatachem, in the context of inui, in the context of refraining from eating, in the context of refraining from drinking, and all of the other inuyim. So the pasuk itself has this issue. Our question, our problem is not with the Rambam. We have to take it up with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He wrote in his Torah in this way, calling inuyim Shabbos, calling inuyim shvisa, resting from eating and drinking, a strange phraseology. It's a problem, the pasuk, that we have to deal with as well. So in order to answer that question, we have to zoom in a little bit more on a different word in the pasuk. The pasuk refers to the isser of eating and drinking on Yom Kippur, and by extension all of the other inuyim, not as lo sochlu and lo sishtu, but as ve'inisem es nafshosechem. In other contexts as well, it's ta'anu es nafshosechem v'chol nefesh asher lo se'uneh be'etzem yom hazeh. It's always a lashon of inui, ve'inisem, ta'anu. So why is the Torah saying it in such a strange way? So it's clear, and you see this in Chazal already, it's clear that the Torah here does not mean to say that there is an Isser to eat and drink on Yom Kippur. That's not what the Torah is saying. That is true. There is an Isser to eat and to drink on Yom Kippur, but that's because there's an Isser to do anything that's pleasurable on Yom Kippur. Meaning the Torah says that there's a mitzvah to afflict yourself on Yom Kippur. And then we understand that to translate as, how does one afflict his body? How does one afflict himself? By not eating, by not drinking, by not wearing shoes, etc., etc. The Torah is telling us, afflict yourselves. Ta'anu es nafshosechem, v'nisem es nafshosechem. Afflict yourselves. And that translates into an Isser of Achila. Just as an example, the Gemara in Yuman Daf Ayin Gimel suggests a Havamina. It entertains a possibility that in Yom Kippur, it's true that you can't eat. It's true that you can't drink. It's true that you can't smear oil on. It's true that you can't wear shoes. It's true you can't wash up. All of that is true. But the Gemara says maybe additionally, you should also have to go out in the middle of the day on Yom Kippur. We're in Los Angeles. So in the middle of the day, it's going to be pretty hot in Yom Kippur. Also now, it's been pretty hot lately, right? So Yom Kippur is going to be very hot. So you should go at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the heat of the day, and you should sit outside on a hill and bake in the sun and burn your skin and schwitz and be totally uncomfortable. The Gemara says, why shouldn't you do that? The pasuk says, "V'nisem es nafshosechem." You should find ways to afflict yourself. So yes, eating and drinking is one good example, but let's add more. Let's also pile on other inuyim. Let's roll on a bed of nails. Let's make up a whole bunch of things that can torture us. Let's listen to me speak for 40 minutes. And make up pick your poison. Whatever's an inui for you, choose it and do it on Yom Kippur. V'nisem es nafshosechem. So the Gemara gives pushbacks and says, no, because it has to be specifically eating and drinking. It has reasons why it has to be, but it's clear what the Gemara assumes. The Gemara understands that the pasuk, when it says v'nisem es nafshosechem, it doesn't mean don't eat. It means afflict yourself. And it translates as not eating. And the Gemara could have imagined, it could have believed there would be such a thing as other types of inui, aside from the ones that we know about. You could have invented other torturous practices to take upon on yourself on Yom Kippur, because that's what the pasuk is asking of us after all. V'nisem es nafshosechem, afflict yourselves, torture yourselves on the day of Yom Kippur. This has halachic applications and implications as well. The Gemara in Yuman Daf Pei Aleph says that, usually when you have an Isser of Achila, let's say you have the Isser Achila of Chelev and Dam and different types of foods that you're not allowed to eat, Nevelis and Trefis, or Mitzvahs Achila, Matzah, right? You have mitzvahs that you have to eat certain things. So how much do you have to eat in order to be Mekayim that mitzvah? How much do you have to eat in order to violate the Aveira? So generally speaking, we know the shear is usually a kazayis, the size of an olive. When it comes to Yom Kippur, it's a different size entirely. When it comes to Yom Kippur, a person is not chayiv on having eaten on Yom Kippur. He's not going to be chayiv the punishment for having eaten and violated that Aveira until he eats a kakoseves hagasa, a much bigger shear, more than a kazayis. Why is it more? It should be less. They were so careful about Yom Kippur, we're so stringent. Because the shear on Yom Kippur is not about eating. Achila is a kazayis. You already halachically did the act of eating, of achila, if you ate a kazayis, a small amount of food. But until you eat a kakoseves agasa, until you eat a larger shear, like you have to on Yom Kippur to violate, you haven't accomplished what the Gemara calls yisuvei daita, yishuv adas. The Isser on Yom Kippur is not to eat. Eating takes place already by a kazayis. The Isser on Yom Kippur is to give yourself any yishuv adas. It's to allow yourself to feel comfortable. If you eat enough to feel satiated, then you have a problem. Then you violate Yom Kippur. If you eat enough to have eaten a kazayis, it's not a good thing, but you didn't violate Yom Kippur on the D'oraisa level fully at that point yet. Because the Isser of Achila on Yom Kippur, again, is not an Isser of eating. It's not that it's forbidden to eat on Yom Kippur. It's forbidden to get pleasure on Yom Kippur. It's forbidden to feel satiated on Yom Kippur. It's forbidden to feel fulfilled physically on Yom Kippur. And therefore, it's forbidden to eat. But the shear has nothing to do with eating. It has to do with feeling fulfilled. That's not accomplished until the bigger size of kakoseves hagasa. In an even more fascinating chiddush, the Shaigas Aryeh very famously suggests that whereas in general, when it comes to Isurei Achila, you can't eat Nevela, you can't eat Treifa, you can't eat Chazer, you can't eat these things. So on a D'oraisa level, it's true that it's Asr Midrabanan no matter what, but on a D'oraisa level, things are only going to be Asr and Chayiv if a person eats Kederech Achila. Meaning, if I eat the food in its normal way, I take a piece of Nevela, I cook it up, and I eat it in a nice fashion with a fork and a knife, I eat it in a nice way, so then I'm Chayiv for eating Nevelos and Treifos, for eating non-kosher, which is against the Torah. What if I melt it down and eat it in a disgusting manner that's burning hot and isn't the derech achila? It's not normal to consume food in that way. So the Torah assumes in that case it's not derech achila. It's so abnormal, it's so strange to eat in that way that it's not called a maisa achila. It's not called an act of achila, and therefore you're not going to be chayiv on a d'oraisa level for having eaten food in such a strange, out of the normal manner. That's what the normal halacha is. The Shaigas Aryeh says that's true by nevela and shreifa and chazer and all of these hisurei achila and the mitzvahs that go along with them on the opposite side. When it comes to Yom Kippur, though, it has nothing to do with eating. As long as that food gets from your mouth to your stomach, doesn't matter if you ate it in a strange way or a normal way, you consumed food on Yom Kippur, you're satiated, you have the nutrients in you, you feel replenished, you feel like you have koach, you feel like you have pleasure from the food that you consumed, then you're already in violation of the isser of ta'anu es nafshosechem, v'inisem es nafshosechem. You are kol asher lo seunez. You haven't done the inu, you haven't done the affliction on your body. You didn't eat it, you didn't do a ma'isa achila. True, but you did feel fulfilled. You did get yeshiva das. You did get satiated by the food. Even though you didn't do an actual halachic act of eating, you've already violated it, says the Shaigas Aryeh. This Shaigas Aryeh sets off a firestorm in the poskim. There's a big tumult about the question of what if a person consumes food without ever having put it in his mouth? What if somehow a person gets food into his body without actually going through the process of eating? How could that be? How could anyone do that? Intravenous feeding, IV, exactly. So if a person takes an intravenous feeding on Yom Kippur, I think nowadays, here locally also, it's very popular to do IV, right? It's like it's like a cool thing to do. Like you get the IV for caffeine, you get the IV for being smart, being good looking, I don't know. There are a million IVs now. So imagine a person on Yom Kippur, he says he doesn't need the good looking IV on Yom Kippur. He's blessed, he's already good looking, Baruch Hashem. So he doesn't need that, but he wants the feeling full IV so he could daven a stark ne'ilah. So he says, I'll take an IV and I'll fill myself up with a steak and potatoes meal through the IV. So some of the posts can point out that according to the Shaigas Aryeh, so maybe that's still usser. Maybe that's still a problem of vini semes nafshosechem. True, you didn't eat, but Yom Kippur is not about eating. Yom Kippur is about afflicting yourself, and you haven't afflicted yourself. You've given yourself the satiation of a meat and potatoes meal. Okay, you didn't put it through your mouth, you didn't chew on it, you didn't swallow it, you didn't enjoy the taste, but you were not me'aneh. You were not afflicting yourself, your nefesh, and therefore you're in violation of vini semes nafshosechem, and you're kol nefesh asher lo suneh b'etzayom hazeh, and you're in violation of the Isser. Some do suggest that within the Shaigas Aryeh. Chaim Ozer Grodzinski, in his Tshuvas Achiezer, in Chela Gimel, so he rejects this out of hand. He thinks it's impossible. He says the Shaigas Aryeh's chiddush is that if you eat something, even in an abnormal way, you're chayav in Yom Kippur. But it starts with eating. It has to be eating. If it's not eating and food just ends up in your stomach through a tube, that's not called eating in the first place, and you can't even get started with Yom Kippur unless you've actually done some sort of eating. The type of eating is downgraded on Yom Kippur. It's a lower standard in terms of what's called eating, but it has to be some form of eating in the first place, and therefore Rav Chaim Ozer rejects this entirely. However you come out halacha l'maisa on all those different questions, what does become clear in Chazal and in the poskim is that what the Torah is giving us over here is a prescription for a fundamental mitzvah not to not eat, but a fundamental mitzvah to afflict ourselves. That's the mitzvah, v'ini semes nafshosechem. Doesn't say lo sochlu, doesn't say lo sishtu. That has halachic ramifications. Whether you go as far as the Shaigas Aryeh, as far as the other posts want to go, that's a question, but there certainly are halachic applications and ramifications to the fact that we have this isser of v'ini semes nafshosechem, and not the isser of lo sochlu v'lo sishtu, like in the rest of the areas of the Torah. Now that recognition of the unique nature of what this mitzvah is, it's not about eating, it's about afflicting yourself or not afflicting yourself, that might clue us in to help us understand the question that we just left off of, the second question we posed tonight, the question of the lashon of shvisa. We mentioned that the Rambam, but it wasn't his fault, it was really HaKadosh Baruch Hu's fault in the Torah. The Rambam says that there's a mitzvah on Yom Kippur, lishbos me'achilu shasiyah, to rest from eating and from drinking. And we said that's not the Rambam's fault. The Torah says, Shabbos Shabboson tiyeh lachem, v'ini semes nafshosechem, tishbesu shabbatachem, that you should have shvisa from eating and drinking. So we said shvisa, that means resting. On Shabbos, you rest from malacha. On Yom Kippur, you don't rest from eating. You stop eating. You cease to eat. But you don't rest. It's not about shvisa. It's not about taking a nap from eating. So what is the Torah's kavanah over here? What's the Torah mean when it says shvisa, shabboson, about eating and drinking? So that's true that it doesn't mean resting. But the truth is that's because we have a very simplistic understanding of what shvisa means. When we talk about shvisa, even on Shabbos, we do not mean rest. Shabbos is not about resting. And shvisa from malacha is not about resting either. The word shvisa in the Torah doesn't mean rest. It means stopping, cessation. Let's say, for example, the Torah says after the Mabul, Yom v'layla lo yishposu, that from now on, day and night, nothing's going to stop. The seasons will keep going on their schedule. Day and night, time will function as always, every single day. It'll never be terminated. Now, day, night, winter, fall, these things don't work and then rest. So you can't say yishbosu or lo yishbosu in the sense of resting and stopping to do malacha. The day and the night and all of the seasons don't work for a living, and they don't take vacations. So what does the Torah mean? It means that from now on in history, after the Mabul, day, night, all the seasons, they won't cease to function. They won't shut down. Their function will never be terminated. Shvisa means to shut something down entirely. Something is shavas. It's at rest, not resting. It's at rest. It's stopped. It's not functioning anymore. It's stopped in its tracks. There's a cessation entirely of all activity. That's what Shvisa really means. On Shabbos, the whole world stops. On Shabbos, there's silence. On Shabbos, we don't go to work, but the not going to work is a reflection of the fact that everything is shut down. All of the routines are at rest. We go to shul, we daven, we learn, we do things that are ruchnias, but physicality stops on Shabbos. That's what Shvisa really means at its core. It doesn't mean to rest. It means to stop. It means cessation of activity. Now, the word cessation is applicable to eating and drinking as well. Every single day of our lives, we eat and we drink in order to stay alive and to enjoy ourselves. We take showers in order to stay clean. We do all of these things in a daily routine in order to keep our body in good shape and to enjoy ourselves. We take care of our body with physical functions every single day. What we're told on Yom Kippur is v'inisemes nafshosechem, not don't eat. It's not about resting from eating. We're told v'inisemes nafshosechem, shut your body down. Don't pay attention to your guf today. Your body, your material, physical life doesn't matter today. Today is about a higher calling. Today is about something spiritual. Today is about ruchnis. It's about something above and beyond your body. Shut your guf down. Shut your body down. Says the Torah, you should afflict yourself. Your body should get no enjoyment. And you know what the appropriate term for that is? Tishbesu shabbatachem. Shut it down. Cease to do all physical activity. Your body should be deriving no enjoyment. You shouldn't be paying attention to your physical functions anymore. Cease and desist. Afflict yourself through complete cessation of all bodily function. That's what we're told. Shabbos Shabbason tiyelachem v'nisem nafshesichem tishbesu shabbatachem. Shut it all down. Live a life of spirituality on the day of Yom Kippur. Don't pay attention at all to the guf or to any physical needs that you usually have and you usually pay attention to during the rest of the year. With that background, we can actually start to understand a third difficult word in the psukim. We spoke about already Shabbason, right? We said, what's the word Shabbason mean? Now we answered that. We spoke about the word V'inisem. We explained that it means afflicting yourself, and it doesn't mean don't eat, but it means something wider and broader and bigger than just not eating, and something deeper as well. Shabbason and V'inisem. But there's another word that seems to be a bit strange in this pasuk. In all the times that the Torah tells us about the mitzvah of inui, of afflicting ourselves in Yom Kippur, again and again the Torah stresses that you shall not afflict, you shall afflict yourself, you shall not eat and drink, you shall do these things in Yom Kippur, nafshosechem, v'inisem es nafshosechem, te'ana es nafshosechem, kol nefesh asher lo se'uneh. What does the word nefesh mean? So generally you and I interpret that exactly as soul, as the neshama, as the spiritual core that's inside a person. But that makes this pasuk very strange. What gets afflicted on Yom Kippur? My body, my guf. It doesn't get to eat, it doesn't get to drink, it doesn't get to wash up. My guf, my body gets afflicted on Yom Kippur. My nefesh is in its happy place. My neshama is soaring. It's in davening. It's not being fed food from this world. It's living in a world of olam haba where it usually feels like a stranger in a world of olam hazeh. So why does the Torah refer to the affliction of Yom Kippur as v'nisem es nafshosechem? It should be v'nisem es gufchem. It should be v'nisem es your body. It shouldn't be about the nefesh, about the neshama. So that's a strange phrase. Now you might think it's a klutz kasha. Sometimes we do refer to people as a nefesh, but the truth is the Gemara definitely picks up on this in the Gemara in Yuma Daf Ayin Gimel. The Zohar also picks up on this and assumes it means nefesh as spiritual. The Gemara goes a different route, but the point is, the question is a valid question. Why does the Torah refer to us in this strange way as a nefesh on Yom Kippur, when really we're afflicting, we're torturing our guf, our body, not our neshama? So Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav, asked this question, and he gave a very simple, rational, basic answer. The Rav said that if you look in the Rambam in many places, but in particular in the Shmona Prakim, in the first parak, so he says the word nefesh does not mean what you and I just said it means. The word nefesh actually refers to biological impulses. It's not a spiritual, metaphysical reality. The nefesh inside of a person is the animating life force. It's the repository of all of a person's feelings and drives. There's a nefesh that gives you the feelings and the need and the ability to do nutrition and it gives you the imagination that you have and logic that you're able to use in your mind. Nefesh means the animating life force in the biology of a person. The Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim in Chelik Aleph says the word nefesh doesn't even mean soul. It means anything with a life force. Anything with a life force, anything that has movement, anything that's animated in terms of its existence is referred to as a nefesh. It's a borrowed term. So when the Torah says "V'inisemes nafsho seichem," it means afflict your biological drives. We want to eat. We want to satiate. We want to experience nutrition and to fill ourselves up. Don't do that on Yom Kippur. That's not so hard to understand. V'nisem es nafsho seichem. Nefesh always means biological impulse. So the Rav wasn't bothered by this question. The Zohar, however, clearly interprets the word nefesh here to refer to the spiritual nature of a human being. In fact, the Ksava Kabbalah, in his commentary on Parshas Emor, points out that there's another strange point in the pasuk. It says, "V'nisem es nafsho seichem." Nafsho seichem is plural. It could have said, "V'nisem es nafshechem," your nefesh, but it says your nefashos, your multiplicity of souls. So the Ksava Kabbalah says, even though sometimes nefesh can mean a physical, biological impulse, but in this pasuk, it's clearly referring to two things. It's referring to your physical body and it's referring to your neshama, your spiritual core. So however you want to slice it, he says, we have to ask the question of why does the Torah think there's some sort of torture, some sort of affliction that's occurring on the nefesh, on the neshama of the human being over the course of Yom Kippur? That's the question that we want to answer now. So how do we explain that? So in another place entirely, the Maharal develops a very important theme. It's in Gur Aryeh in Parshas Chukas. It's also in his Tshuva drashas in Shabbos Tshuva. The Maharal develops a very important idea that he says Yom Kippur is really a day where we try to separate and distinguish between our neshama and our guf. All year long, we function with both at the same time. We have a guf, which does our physical actions. We have a neshama, which is driving our spiritual impulse. And we have the guf, which carries out the will of the neshama. They're both functioning hand in hand. On Yom Kippur, we have a goal. We have the opportunity and the experience and the great zchus to try to separate and distinguish between those two entities within a person. On Yom Kippur, we totally divorce our guf from our neshama. We don't eat, we don't drink, we don't wash up, we don't do any of those things that we usually do to take care of our body, and we let our body just fall by the wayside. In that way, in so doing, we totally separate, we splice out our neshama from our guf, and we experience an existence of ruchnius within a world of materialism. Generally speaking, we live in Olam Hazeh. On Yom Kippur, we elevate ourselves and take out our guf, take out our materialism, and live on the level of Olam Haba, even within this physical existence. Elsewhere, the Maharal comments that also other mitzvahs on Yom Kippur represent that theme. You know, on Yom Kippur, we don't do this now because we don't have the Beis HaMikdash and the Kohen to do it for us, but on Yom Kippur, there are two goats that are offered as karbanos. One is the unique one that's pushed off the cliff, but one of them is shechted in the Beis HaMikdash, and then the blood is brought inside to the Kodesh HaKodashim. And the Maharal says that the blood of a goat is very similar to the blood of a human being. It has a similar consistency and a similar color to the blood of a human being. And we know the Torah says, Ki adam huha nefesh. The dam represents the nefesh, represents the soul of a human being. On Yom Kippur, we take the goat, the seir, we shecht it, we take the body and put it on the side, we take the blood, which represents the nefesh, the neshama of a person, and we bring it into the Kodesh HaKodashim. We say, yes, we've sinned. Yes, we've done averos. But that was our guf. Our guf is out there, outside of the Kodesh HaKodashim. What we bring in now is just the dam hu nefesh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on Yom Kippur, we come before you as just a nefesh, just a neshama, just our spiritual core. Everything else we've separated. We're not physical anymore. V'inisemes nafsho seichem. We don't exist in that way. We've afflicted our body. We've separated ourselves. We're totally spiritual, totally ruchni. And we take the dam hu nefesh of the goat, which looks like our blood, and we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what we are. This defines us. This is who we are. Here, take this. Recognize that this is who we are. See us as our core neshama and not as the guf that we've left outside. On Yom Kippur, the nefesh and the neshama, they're not situated in their normal habitat. They've been separated from the guf, and the neshama ascends itself alone, leaving the guf far behind. In his footnotes to the Tshuva drashas, so Rabbi Hartman, who's famous for making the Maharal readable by writing his amazing footnotes to the Sefer, the big blue Maharals. So Rabbi Hartman has an amazing idea. He says, based on this Maharal, you can really finally understand this pasuk. We said the pasuk says, "V'inisemes nafsho seichem." You should afflict, you should torture your nefesh. We said, what do you mean? You're not torturing your nefesh. You're torturing your guf. Your nefesh is very happy to be fasting. Your nefesh doesn't want food, generally speaking. Your nefesh wants to live in a olam haruchnius. It wants to live in a world of spirituality, an olam haba, above and beyond our physical existence. So what does it mean, v'inisemes nafsho seichem? So Rabbi Hartman says beautifully, based on the Maharal, he says, no, what happens on Yom Kippur is two things. We afflict our guf. We torture our physical existence by refraining from normal activities. And that hurts. That's difficult. We struggle with that. But once that happens, we destroy our guf, and the only thing that's left is our neshama. Our neshama, on the one hand, feels blissful. It feels happy that it's elevated above and beyond the material world. But on the other hand, at the same time, our neshama is now homeless. It's displaced. Generally speaking, we have a spiritual core, a nefesh and neshama, that rests inside a kli, a receptacle, a vessel of the guf. And the guf, the body, is able to help the neshama carry out its tasks, and it lives in that comfortable space of the guf. Yes, there's a repellent force, there's a little bit of a push and a give and a take between the two of them. They are at odds with each other, but at least the neshama, the nefesh, has a home. On Yom Kippur, the nefesh is homeless. It floats out of the body. We separate the dam hu nefesh from the goat. We separate the nefesh from the guf. Our neshama floats on its own, and therefore it's displaced. It's disconnected from the guf. That is an inui. That is a torturous experience for the neshama. The neshama feels uncomfortable on Yom Kippur because it's not connected to its source. It's not in its rightful place. It's not in its natural habitat of the guf of the human being. When we accomplish v'inisem es nafshosechem, we first torture our body. We afflict our physical existence, our biological impulses. Through that, we accomplish a shvisa, a total cessation of any physical function. We shut down physically on Yom Kippur. But when we shut down physically and our body ceases to function, then our nefesh feels an inui. Our neshama feels tortured because it's homeless, it's displaced, it's not connected to its source, and it's not in its physical home that it usually is zocha to. And because of that, it's taka v'inisem es nafshosechem. Our nefesh feels out of place. Our nefesh feels uncomfortable on Yom Kippur, not only our guf, but also our nefesh. So we started a while ago with a question. We wanted to know, how does tshuva possibly work? It's not a game. If you did the Aveira, it doesn't matter how long ago, it was a reality. It happened. You can't change history. You can't time travel back in time and say, oh, it didn't happen anymore by apologizing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can't wipe away this reality of swallowing poison. It happened. It's there. So how do we possibly do tshuva? How is it possible to understand the concept of repentance? So the answer, with the Maharal's help, is that every person is really comprised of these two entities. We're really a composite, a dialectical composite of two entities, a guf and the neshama. We have a body and we have a soul. The part of our existence, the part of our personality that commits averos is not our neshama. Our guf commits averos. We're responsible for our guf. We have to take care of it, both in terms of how we treat it and how we use it to do other things. That's for sure true. But it's always the guf, it's always the body that commits the avera. The metaphysical side, the spiritual side, the core neshama of a person doesn't do averos. It sits there in all its purity and tries to positively impact the guf. If we do averos, the neshama remains pristine. The guf has strayed and sinned. When a person does the avera, it wasn't really him. It was half of him. It was the physical half of him. And the possibility of tshuva is because the Torah recognizes this fact. The possibility of tshuva is because if we really did averos, you're right, we can never get rid of them. They're a reality. How can we do tshuva? But the answer is we didn't really do those averos. Half of us did the averos, only our physical half. But our true definitional core, our true identity as a neshama, as a spiritual being, never did any averos. And so on Yom Kippur, we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we say, we want to do tshuva. And we say, but how do we do tshuva? We already did averos. So we say, we have an idea. We'll separate our guf and our neshama. We'll take the dam hu nefesh out of our body, and we'll show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that wasn't really us. That didn't define us. What did the avera? Who did the avera? That guf, that body that I left outside the Kodesh HaKodashim. But today, here on Yom Kippur, I come to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and say that sin, that avera was external. It was tangential. It wasn't me. It didn't define me. That was my guf, that was my body, that was my physical existence, but my neshama, my core identity, the animating life force within me, never did such an avera, and therefore tshuva becomes possible. That feeling is a feeling of torture, and it's a feeling of bliss. It's a feeling of fulfillment, and it's a feeling of displacement. I feel great that I'm able to achieve kapara. I feel terrible that I can't eat. I feel wonderful that I'm able to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say I'm a spiritual being, but I feel so uncomfortable that my nefesh is separated from my guf. It's a very uncomfortable, disconnected feeling that we feel on Yom Kippur. Usually the body and the neshama are so synchronized. They work so much in tandem with each other, and in these moments, they're so separate, so distinct, that it's hard to imagine feeling more uncomfortable and more homeless than in those moments of Yom Kippur. It's taka, a moment of v'inisem es nafsho seichem. But we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are not our guf. We are a neshama. And that's what we're showing him on Yom Kippur. That's how tshuva becomes possible. Now we feel that most acutely on Yom Kippur. When we're fasting, when we're avoiding washing up, when we're not drinking, we feel it most acutely that we are not bodies, we are just souls. But the goal of Yom Kippur is not only to feel it on Yom Kippur. The goal of Yom Kippur is to feel it then and take it past Ne'ilah into Matzah Yom Kippur, into the rest of the year and into the rest of our lives. We're supposed to feel that feeling of, I know I have a guf to do something. I have a calling of mitzvahs I'm supposed to fulfill with this guf, but really I'm a neshama. Really I'm a spiritual core. Really I have a soul that's motivating and driving and deciding everything that I do. Yom Kippur is the moment where we learn that, where we're supposed to take that lesson and put it into action through the rest of the year and through the rest of our lives. Our guf and our neshama, they work together, but they are separate entities. We get confused because they're so in sync. They're so properly linked up with each other that we get confused and we think of ourselves as a guf. But we're not a guf, we're a neshama. We learn that lesson in Yom Kippur, and we're supposed to take that going forward past Yom Kippur as well. It's a beautiful essay that, really it's a letter that was written by Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik was the brother of Rav Soloveitchik that I quoted before, the Rav. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik had a stroke, I think it was 1983. So a week after he had a stroke, he was sitting in a hospital bed with half of his body totally numb, and he couldn't really feel his left arm, his left shoulder, his left leg. He couldn't feel anything, and his right side was working fine. And he was laying in a hospital bed, and he wrote a letter to the outside, and he said he wants to understand for them, and he wants to teach to them, and he wants to reflect on the feeling that he has in these moments. And he describes so beautifully exactly what we're talking about here. He says, generally speaking, when a person is themselves, they feel themselves and they feel outside things as outside things. If I hold you, if I pick you up, I feel like I'm carrying you. And if you carry me, I feel like I'm being carried. We're two separate and distinct entities. But my arm, I'm not carrying, I'm just moving it. We feel our own body as if it's part of us. He said that in truth, religiously, we don't believe that. Religiously, we believe that we are a soul, and our soul is separate from the body. And the body moves, but the soul is in its own place doing its own spiritual things. Those are separate entities. We religiously believe that, but we don't experience it because they're so linked up. Our mind and our body, our soul and our guf are so linked up that we don't get to experience it. He said now he experiences it for the first time. When he tries to lift his left arm, he said, it feels like he's lifting someone else's arm. When he tries to move his left shoulder, it feels like he's trying to move someone else's shoulder, because he has no control, he has no feeling in that side of his body. It feels like it's an attached limb, but it's not part of him. He knows that there's a contrast, because on the right side, he feels like it's him. But on the left side, he feels like it's someone else's body. It's an unbelievable feeling, he said. You know what bothered him the most, though? He said, really, the left side is correct. This body is just a separate kli. It's a separate entity from my neshama. Really, I should always feel like my physicality is external to my spirituality, but I only feel it on my left side. And even now, when I know what it feels like, I cannot translate it to my right side. And he expressed such frustration that he can't understand how come he can't move that feeling from one side to the other. The truth is that our body and our neshama are separated. The truth is that our guf is a dead limb that's hanging onto our neshama, and the neshama is the animating life force, but it's hard for us to tap into, it's hard for us to feel. Rahman al-Tzlan, he was able to feel it halfway, but only because of a terrible situation. But that's the goal of Yom Kippur, is to recognize that there's a body and there's a soul. There's a guf, but really there's an neshama that's our life force, that's animating everything that we do, that's really the core of all of our decisions and all of our personality. That's the reason we're able to do tshuva, because we recognize that the guf is not actually us. The guf is the arm hanging from the body. The us is the neshama. It's the pure, pristine soul that never did an aveira. On Yom Kippur, we show that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We get rid of our bodies. V'nisem es nafsho seichem. It feels a little uncomfortable, physically and spiritually, to be so disconnected, to be so disjointed, to not be synchronized like we usually are. But that discomfort is exactly the point. V'nisem es nafsho seichem. You have to recognize the discomfort, you have to recognize the disconnect, and you have to recognize that who we truly are is the neshama part of us, not the guf part of us. V'nisem es nafsho seichem is to afflict ourselves in order to discover ourselves, to torture ourselves in order to become ourselves. We only recognize who we truly are by separating the distinct parts into those two disparate entities, and then coming back and recognizing that's not only true on Yom Kippur, that's true every single day of the year. Tshuva is just the first step in that long lifetime process of living as nefashos, as neshamos, and not living as physical bodies that have no connection to spirituality. So the Siyat Dishmaya, Yom Kippur Haba Aleinu L'Tova, should be a lesson in ruchnius, It should teach us this message that we are a neshama, we are a nefesh, ki adam hu a nefesh. We can enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim Yom Kippur, elevate ourselves above and beyond this reality. But b'siyat d'shmaya, that Yom Kippur should translate into a Matzah Yom Kippur and the year and the lifetime of living like a nefesh. The v'inisemes nafsho seichem should translate into finding our nefesh, finding our inner core, becoming ourselves, and b'siyat d'shmaya, living in a level of neshama, in a level of ruchnius, for many happy, healthy years of Avodas Hashem b'siyat d'shmaya. Everyone should have a wonderful Yom Noraim.